Welcome to the Business Owners Strategy Forum. This is week 8 now that we've been holding this particular forum, and we've covered off some really good topics over the last sort of 8 weeks or so, and today is no exception to that. So I'm actually just going to probably do a bit of a recap just quickly around some of the things we've covered off so far, just for some of the people that might have just joined us. So I'm your host. My name is Matt Murphy. I'm Managing Director of Prime Accounting and Business Advisory, and fundamentally here to support business owners to achieve the reasons why they went in business in the first place. That's pretty much fundamentally why the business has been created and why we exist in the marketplace. And so the reason we created this forum 8 weeks ago was pretty much because of the fact that we're in uncharted territories. There was a crisis, there still is a crisis going on. And I wanted to make sure that, we were supporting the business owners and guiding them and our clients around, connecting with them, because it can become pretty lonely when you're going through these particular circumstances. Share information in probably the fastest way we could, because there was a lot of new information coming through, especially the government stimulus packages. And really just strategizing and implementing as well, because really we had to start to think about clever ways to, get through this particular crisis and make some decisions. So that's been pretty much the themes for the last 7 weeks or so. And so we've covered off on a number of topics in that period of time. We started off, with topics around planning uncertain times, and the reason why I'm going through this quickly now is because we have all of these recorded, and anyone that wants to go back and have a look at some of these to get some benefit from them certainly would be well worth doing so. In week 2, the government stimulus packages started to get announced, and so we started to speak about those. That's probably been pretty much the common theme for the last 7 weeks or so to 6 weeks or so, to try and get an understanding of what's going on. And we're only going to do a quick update on that today, because there hasn't been a lot of changes since last week. And then we also had a presenter from a lawyer talking about workplace law, which was good, because obviously we're making decisions around employment, especially at the moment. We had a representative from Westpac Bank to talk about sort of the banking's response to this particular situation. And we also had Sarah McCrum talking about maintaining wellbeing going through a crisis. And unfortunately enough, we've got Sarah speaking today again, so it's looking forward to that. We also had, did a presentation on grant funding available. So, what sort of, on top of the stimulus packages, what sort of other funding is available, and that was good. And we also started to talk about some of the creative and clever things that people doing their businesses to pivot. And we had a presenter, Mark Bowe, as part of Prime as well, who's a special advisor to us. And he also went through some case studies around that too in the following week. We had an economic update from Jonathan Bayes, our Chief Investment Officer. And we started to have some client stories too, one of our clients from Ambience Lighting, which is great. That was well received. I've been presenting sort of throughout the topics, but one of the major ones we've spoken about was leadership in a crisis. So what do you need to do to be an effective leader in this particular situation? And talking about business strategy once again. And then last week we had business succession planning, what's happening at the moment in the landscape of that. And we had our Managing Director of Prime Capital and Corporate Advisory, Tim Bennett, speak. And then I started to speak more about the business planning process for 2021. And that's obviously something that we need to turn our attention to, not just the short term to get us to 30th of June or through the crisis, but how we're going to come out of that. And we're going to talk more about that today when I speak to Sarah. So in terms of today, I'm just going to do a couple of minute update just on something you probably need to consider, if you haven't already done so, on the JobKeeper rules. And we also can cover some question times later. And just with the questions, obviously we've got the Q&A button on the forum. And so any questions you have throughout the session and the forum, please write them up, and we'll cover them off at the end after we've done our presentations for today. I've also got one of our clients, Ian Brady, who's the Managing Director of Steadfast Solutions, and they're an IT management and security company. And I've known Ian for 15 years, and he's looked after some of the businesses that I've been associated with over that period of time, and I trust him in terms of all the things that he knows about the IT landscape and communication landscape. So he's going to talk from his perspective as a business owner, but also as an IT professional as well in that space. And we also have Sarah, as I mentioned before, who we're going to talk about sort of business purpose, clarity and connection, and really focusing on what we want to achieve when we come out of this particular scenario, the crisis that we've got right now. So that's going to be the format of the day. So we'll be with you for the next, as normally, about an hour. And so we are then going to, first of all, cover off the JobKeeper. So with the JobKeeper, we've been talking a lot about this, and the media has obviously got lots in it as well. We're now down to probably specialist advice to each individual client, so very specific circumstances and in terms of the questions that we're answering. And so, really now it's not necessarily about general information, it's about specific information. But just one thing that we need to make sure that you do, especially by today, is that any final outstanding back payments that you need to make to the employees of at least $1,500 per fortnight have got to be made by close of business today. So that's just something to be wary of if you haven't already done that. And secondly, there's a three-step process that goes on with the JobKeeper. So if you're managing your own registration application process, so make sure you've gone to the ATO business portal this week and confirm that you've completed the final steps. So step 1 and step 2 is likely to have been completed, but step 3 was only opened on Monday and requires a simple input of April actual turnover and May projected turnover. So it's sort of covered off in this particular slide here where it talks about, step 1, step 2, step 3. So just make sure that you've covered those particular steps. If you've got any questions and concerns about that, please don't hesitate to give us a call or speak to your accountant about that. Interestingly enough, we're going to start to see some payments coming through. I saw a media release to say that the government has started to pay those as of yesterday. And apparently they've already paid out $1 billion, which I find extraordinary to think that would have occurred that quickly. So obviously they're sticking to their word and keeping to the time frame. So it's pleasing to hear that that's what they're actually doing at the moment. So just make sure that you're across it. So all registrations up to date to ensure that you start to get that information and start to get those payments to support your cash flow and to support your employees. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that. If you've got any questions, please, as I said, put them on the Q&A button, and we'll cover those off later on this particular forum. So now we're actually going to have our first presenter and speaker today being Ian Brady. As I said before, Ian runs a managed services IT business and communication business, and I've got Ian to present probably on multiple fronts, from the perspective of being a business owner, from the perspective of being an IT professional, and also from a practical client case study point of view as well. So we're getting all aspects of IT, and I just thought it'd be great to get Ian's lens in relation to that. So I'm going to hand over control to Ian. So Ian, I will, if you want to unmute yourself and also put your video on, that would be great. And also share your slides if you want to share your slides as well. Thanks, Ian. I can see those slides.
Fantastic.
You're actually playing in, this is a problem with IT, that you're actually playing in the mode of the presenter as opposed to the slide mode, just to let you know, but it's fine.
It's okay. Hold on 2 secs. All right.
I was going to make a suggestion to you, but that's you shouldn't really tell the IT professional what to do.
No, that's right.
It's always the way.
Okay, well, we'll run this way anyway. Thanks everyone, and appreciate the opportunity, Matt, to present today. And wishing everyone also the very best in this uncertain time. And I just wanted to sort of go through our journey a little bit in terms of as we've sort of stepped through the COVID-19 journey, where we're obviously have our IT and remote access set up quite well from the perspective of being able to mobilise people remotely. But we've learned a lot of key steps through this, and I just wanted to share that with everyone today. So our journey took sort of 3 key milestones. The first one being really embracing the paperless scenario, where we're not in the office anymore, where everyone's working remotely. So that access to that sheet of paper is gone, and we need to think differently, act differently to be able to quickly mobilise people working from home. Security is a really strong, really important part of this, and we had to really make sure that all the checks and balances were in place to make sure that people are working from home securely, and we're not exposing our business and our clients' data to untoward information and data breaches. Reviewing telecommunications, looking at what are the optimal ways of connecting and making sure that everyone gets the optimal experience working from home. We did this as not as a cost-cutting exercise. We did it as an optimization exercise, and I think that as part of what I'd really recommend is to do this as optimizing your IT rather than cost-cutting. Review it, optimize it, and implement the best things. And you probably will find there will be a cost saving associated with it, like we did. Because sometimes these telecommunications bills, they sort of just come in and out. So we've got to have a look and get to understand it. But I'll go through that in a little bit more detail. Also, I just wanted to go through some slides in terms of some things that we've done for our clients, and they might apply to you as well. So just start touching base on the telecommunications side of things. So that touches a number of points. It's the internet, it's fixed phones, it's mobiles. Mobiles, one of the big gotchas out there is just to be really careful with your data usage out there. Where we're all now sort of tethering and doing all sorts of things. Just keep an eye on what those data limits are and get some visibility on what's available, etc. So you don't get hit with any unexpected costs. Review your mobile phone contracts to ensure you're on the right plan. They're the kind of things that just sort of the invoice comes in every month, and try and leverage yourself to have the most optimal plan in place and the most amount of flexibility. We basically put aside replacing all our handsets and went on to no contracts to give us the most amount of flexibility, the most amount of data. It's a bit of a trying situation to do, and you're going to be on the phone to whoever your telecommunications provider for a while to get an outcome, but I do stress that that's a pretty important thing to do, particularly right now. Internet is, I think the NBN got a bit of a bad rap, but as you can probably expect now, as a country, we've mobilised remotely very well, and a lot of that's got to do with the NBN. But obviously, review your internet plan at home to ensure you can get the best deal to support the increased load. I can tell you that Wi-Fi repeaters are in short supply, if no supply. But just make sure you've got the right data allowance, etc. Think about internet redundancy. 4G backups are a really good solution, and that's not just for your business, it's also for your home. We've all been on these Zoom calls and the internet starts getting a bit flaky, or the kids put the microwave on and something drops out. So it's good to start thinking about those kind of things, because I see a world where we're going to be working from home more. So think about those kind of things, and it's not a very big investment to add that extra layer on there. looking at your fixed phones, your office phones, etc., is look. I understand a lot of businesses had to mobilise pretty quickly, but diverting your main phone to a mobile is quite difficult. You lose visibility of your inbound calls, etc., and it sets an unprofessional tone to your clients. Review your call flow and see if there's a better way to handle calls. An example of that is for a real estate scenario, people inspecting properties, they kept ringing up all the time. You know, have a recorded message on an auto attendant that says to them, "Hey, if you ring about an update on the property, go to this portal," and then end the call. It reduces that inbound call, and it really forces people to change their habits to call in for things. So just think about what the calls are that are coming into your business, and is there an optimal way that you can change that? Go through your phone bill. Most likely you're paying for services you aren't using. So everyone's done all sorts of little changes over the last 12 to 18 months, particularly with NBN, and there probably will be services in there that you'll be paying for that you don't need. Yeah, I know it's a very boring exercise, but understand your telecommunications bill line by line. Examples of leading the pack. So we've had a couple of clients in there that have had really good successes with demonstrating their adaptability in this kind of environment. A client that's picked up a government contract in the last month. I picked up a couple. Basically, previously they were too expensive, and but their competitors imploded with the current situation, and not being able to handle a disaster recovery solution. So, you know, demonstrating that you're resilient and you can adapt really rings true. Flexible IT allows this business to adapt in these situations. You can quickly move your business and reduce rent and not be off the air. You can reduce your commercial footprint and save costs. And we've seen a lot of clients, particularly in retail, that have you know, all of a sudden had to quickly mobilise, but they can do that without changing and having an adverse impact in their business as they move. Paperless means breaking habits, and COVID-19 is pushing us down that pathway. 3 months ago, we got rid of our multifunction centre and never be used again. We probably found about 2 to 3 cases where each case is where we needed a printer, but we adapted around that. I understand there's different businesses out there and they have different requirements, etc., but always challenge the norm. And you know, all of us on a Zoom meeting today is an example of us changing. And it's assisted us greatly during remote working. And purchase a good document scanner. The savings on document shredding alone and storage costs of paper is astronomical. Decide on an e-sign solution if you don't have one. Based on your requirements. There's DocuSign, there's Adobe, there's a suite of them out there. A handy little tool for scanning your receipts in there is Office Lens. That's the Microsoft one if you're an Office 365 client. And just remember that mandatory data breach notification is here, where you know, all those sheets of paper, etc., are a potential exposure to your business. So reducing that and putting that into electronic is going to make that paper issue disappear, and GDPR is not far away. Security. Okay, so hackers are never going away. They're actually ramping up. We're seeing a lot of evidence, particularly during COVID-19, of them ramping things up. We've already seen the things like the fake COVID text messages and things like that, etc. And that is really going to accelerate even more because people have got time on their hands. They're sitting at home. The security at your team's home won't be the same as the office. You don't have the firewall that's sitting behind, protecting the computers, etc. So we need to think about what protections we can put in place to make sure that they're adequately protected. Think about team utilities like TeamViewer or Dropbox, VNC, all these little tools that you're using to connect onto your office computers. Now, those kind of things can be exploited very easily if not managed correctly and set up correctly. Multi-factor authentication, any external system that you're using, any cloud system that you've got confidential information in there, make sure you've got multi-factor authentication switched on there. That's your Google Authenticator, all sorts of things, Duo. Adapt a really good password policy across all your systems. You know, password is only the first layer. Your multi-factor is the second. There needs to be a clear separation of your home office and your home office devices. So really try and use your work computers entirely to access your network, utilising your, unless there's proper security put in place, using a home computer that doesn't have the same controls to access your office network can expose your office network to whatever's on your home computer. So it's just something to think about. Some industry solutions were potentially looked at there as well. You know, for businesses that use large files, like, you know, architecture, construction, where opening up a file over a VPN is very, very time consuming, no matter what sort of internet connection you have. I just wanted to sort of highlight the drawing there, but particularly is making sure that your network is not directly exposed to the internet, and there is and that's probably where that red cross is where everything gets filtered through a firewall, and then there's sets of protocols in place to make sure that only authenticated people can access that network. So one of the industry solutions out there, and particularly a lot of people have got Microsoft servers, etc., is use a product called remote desktop services gateway, which allows people like in the architecture, construction, etc., they need to access those large files to keep their computers in the office and remote onto it using really cheap and inexpensive notebooks like Chromebooks, and access their files, their CAD files, etc., and have a pretty good experience working from home and be able to meet requirements. Leverage your Office 365 or G Suite subscription. Understand your subscription. So really, there is so many different flavors out there of Office 365. I can't say I'm a G Suite expert, but there probably is the same. There's a large number of tools inbuilt which you can actually start looking at. Microsoft Streams, which is a video streaming service. Microsoft Bookings, which is an external calendar availability checker, so that's like the Calendly application. Microsoft Planner for scheduling. Make sure you have the optimal license and count for your team. They change frequently, and so does headcount. So keep an eye on the amount of licenses you're paying for, and just check to see if you're on the right plan. There's a lot of also internal security audit functions you can use, which are already built into these applications, and I've just left a link there in the slide. And that just gives you a score on what your performance is in terms of compliance and security. Your website, make sure you have an SSL certificate, and you can pretty quickly check that by going to your website and making sure there's a padlock next to it. One thing that is coming up on the radar, and particularly big in America at the moment, is the American Disability Act, where all the images that are on your website have to have a thing called an alt text, where if the website reader can go over it and describe the image. Now, the ADA does have a global jurisdiction. However, we haven't seen any scenarios where there's been any litigation in Australia, but in America it's rampant. And they trawl through people's websites and they start sending letters through. So just think about your accessibility to your website and work through that. Ensure your web developer patches them frequently. Most people are probably using the same sort of website technology, and they can be exploited quickly. So just try and make sure that it gets patched. And optimize your Google My Business and Google Ads. Make sure your spend on your Google Ads is optimal based on the current scenario. Google's very good at debiting your credit card frequently, so it's good to keep an eye on. And Google My Business, keep your message out to your clients in terms of your availability, etc. Hosted PBX is definitely been a big lifeline for us in terms of how we've mobilised. All our support desk team are working from home, and our clients don't know that things have changed. It's essentially picking your phone system up, like your email server, and sticking in the cloud. You can mobilise your workers anywhere. It's highly scalable and affordable. We migrated 180 users 6 months ago, and 80% of them are now working from home during the pandemic, providing essential services throughout Australia. And you wouldn't be able to do that with a traditional phone system. And there's cost savings to be made in it, so it's definitely worth investigating. And then you can think about your call flow improvements. Is there a way that you can push things that can be pushed online rather than people calling in? And integration into Teams is in its infancy, but it's coming, so keep an eye out for it. The silver lining, we've always got to look through the good through the bad. Wean off going to the office where possible. I'm probably a worst advocate for that, but as an IT geek, it's been fantastic to see how everyone's upskilled during the crisis, and myself still got to learn some PowerPoint skills. But it's fantastic, and look, it's so good to see people outside, sunlight, riding bikes, families together, and if we can get that happy medium in place after the end of this, it's a good outcome, and like a storm, this will pass. Thank you everyone for your time, and pass you over to Matt.
Thanks, Ian. That's awesome, mate. Appreciate that. Look, lots of great tips in there, and that's really what I wanted to sort of cover across today is very much around, what we can do from an IT perspective, and use it, use the IT for good rather than evil, as a statement. I've really loved the fact that we've been able to deploy teams to a safer environment, and it's been embraced. And I think now there's a greater acceptance to be able to use a lot of this technology that's been in place for a while. And I think that'll change the way that we live and operate, which I think is a good thing too. So really good tips in relation to communications as well, just not only from a computer perspective, but also from a voice and communication perspective. So really appreciate that, Ian. So thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Matt.
We're going to change sort of pace a little bit, and I've got Sarah McCrum, who's actually going to be talking with me today. So we're going to have a bit of a chat around, what to look forward to, or what to look for when coming out of this particular crisis. So I'll get Sarah to take herself off mute. And hi, Sarah.
Hi, Matt.
So today we're going to have a chat. So Sarah and I have a podcast that we talk on a weekly basis, and we've been speaking for many, many years, and we've had great conversations over those years around sort of, combining Sarah's teachings with my teachings, coming from different angles, and fundamentally solving problems in business for business owners to have a better life. And so we thought we'd create a podcast and actually record those conversations rather than just sort of have them privately so people can get the benefit of them. But we thought today it'd be a good opportunity for us off the back of really what Sarah was talking about in the first time she presented to this forum. Because the first time I presented to the forum was very much a time of fear. People were starting to be very anxious and concerned, and in challenging times, and we were talking about managing stress. And really the purpose of the managing the stress and the anxiety was to ensure that we're able to make clear decisions about the future and where we're going and what we're doing, as opposed to sort of being anxious and uptight. So that the calmer you are, obviously the better decisions that you're going to make. And now we're sort of, 8 weeks into this from a, working from home perspective and kind of a new world. And I've been having lots of conversations with business owners, as Sarah has too, just in terms of starting to think about, well, what does the future look like? And how do we design our businesses to being what we want them to be? Fundamentally from a sustainability and enjoyment perspective, because I was getting a sense, and Sarah was too, around the fact that we're on an unsustainable trajectory in our lives and businesses in terms of just the frenetic pace in which we were required to operate them, live them, which creates more stress and more pressure. And a lot of people starting to say, I'm opting out of this, and people starting to think about selling their businesses or moving on from a succession point of view, where I could see it wasn't probably due to the right reasons. It was probably due to the reasons of fatigue more than anything else. And so, we've had a lot of conversations recently about, well, okay, what do we do in relation to that, and how can we ensure that our business owners are supported and keep sustaining their businesses and thriving? And we've got this time now where we can start to reflect and think about designing the business that we want to have moving forward. And one of the key ingredients that we were talking about earlier this week, Sarah, in our podcast, was around sort of motivation, or the why, and the business purpose. And it's something that a lot of people that have heard me speak before know that I'm pretty passionate about, in terms of, the whole principle around why. Why do you do something? Why do you go into business in the first place? And we thought, okay, with that in mind, it'd probably be worth having a conversation around talking about that business purpose, because really business purpose, the very successful businesses in the world seem to have a very clear purpose, and it's very connected to the business owner. And we say this time and time again. So just thought it'd be great to have a conversation with Sarah today from her perspective, in terms of, thinking about purpose and the differences it makes from her perspective, and what she's seen by talking to people about this particular topic. So Sarah, just probably initial thoughts around some of the things that we've spoken about, in the recent weeks, and even just off the back of that introduction.
Well, what comes to my mind immediately actually is a number of stories that you've told. Almost every week you have a story of somebody, one of your clients who you've spoken to, and you helped them to connect with the purpose of their business. And very often they were, before that, tired or confused or stuck, or the things that we all get into as business owners and as human beings. And you describe every time the way that when they connect with the purpose again, they connect with that kind of life that we talk about, the spirit of business, like they connect with that. It's like the lights come on, and that's what makes us feel good as a human being. And I think it's really easy in business, even when you're running a good business, to get into, okay, this is what I do every day. This is what I do every week. In fact, this is even what I do every year pretty much. And then I deal with this problem and respond to this situation. And we don't come back and question it again. And it was interesting because Matt pushed me really hard last week about my purpose, and my business has always been based around purpose. But by really drilling into the question, it's incredible how much it changes the thinking and therefore the decisions. I mean, it changed the decisions that I'm making, which is changing the course of my business. And I think that that's the value of it. When you start to reflect on purpose and the purpose of the business, it simplifies and clarifies every single decision you make, because everything is defined by why are you doing this? And so what are you doing and why are you doing it? And so it allows us to let go of the just basically working through the to-do list.
So it's probably worth reflecting upon that. Obviously, you've been on a bit of a journey in terms of your business, and just by a bit of background, for those that don't know Sarah, and probably failed to fully introduce her. But Sarah has worked in many multifacets in the past in relation to her journey of understanding business from multiple different lenses. And maybe, Sarah, you want to give a quick intro in relation to that, and then the decisions that you've been making around sort of your business and where you're going and taking that to the next level.
Well, you introduced me in a delightfully vague way there, which reflects actually, like, I came through the typical self-employed coach consultant route where I, like so many people, tended to want to do a bit of everything because there were so many things that I could help people with. And I was told all the time, you know, niche, get specific, be clear who you work with, all the things that we're often told. But I found it very difficult because I could help a lot of different people. About a few years ago, I started working much more around helping people with their relationship with money, because of a story which I won't tell now, but it's kind of a very relevant story. But I still wanted to do a bit of everything. And people are always asking me for everything. And then last week, Matt was asking me the big why question, and it became so clear to me what the purpose of the business is. And the business is not the same as me. I was very much like I was the business, and many of my clients, business owners, even when they have businesses and teams and it's all very organized, they're so identified with the business that there's not much sense of separation. So I started seeing that there's me, and then there's a business, and that I have my own purpose, which is my life purpose, my sense of what I'm doing here, but the business has its own purpose. And clarifying that, which for me, I'll tell you exactly what it is. So that my purpose is to cultivate the spirit of generosity in business so that we create a world that works for all of us. That's the phrase, that a world that works for all of us is a phrase from Buckminster Fuller. And that doesn't tell me exactly what to do, but I know that I'm an educator, so it tells me very clearly, and this is what I already do, I teach courses. But it helped me to be very clear about the people I want to work with, who are a specific type of business owner. But that sounds all very kind of ordinary, like we hear this stuff all the time. But I think what happened for me was that, and look, I sold 10,000 courses last year. So I'm already doing it. It's not like, you know, I'm not a beginner in this. What happened was a clarity that allowed me to say, I don't need to do probably 30 to 50% of the activities that I do every single week at the moment, because they are just things that I've been told to do by some business consultant somewhere or some mentor, because that's their thing. And I can ask myself, what will actually get me to the thing that I have decided I'm all about and my business is about most effectively? And it's such a powerful thing. It's actually difficult to describe. Like, I work with purpose all the time, and yet the power of being pushed around this question is dramatic. And I said to Matt on Monday, I said, it feels like I have literally saved myself years of work that I would otherwise have done on the trajectory that I was on previously. And that's why I felt we talked about what to talk about in this forum. And that's why I feel this is so important, because I really see that it can literally change the way you work, change the future, change the success of your business, and simplify it and make it more what you want and less of what you don't want.
Yeah, and that's been lots of conversations that I've been having recently about that. You know, always saying, well, design the life that you want to, design the business life you want to have. And I think now we've got this a really interesting and great opportunity to do so, because it's almost like we could potentially reset exactly the pathway, similar to what you were speaking about before, is that you've reset your pathway. And so we can either go back to the way that life was before COVID, or we can actually change to where we want to get to. And by making really good, clear decisions, you've put yourself in a trajectory that's actually going, as you said, you saved years of potential
hard work
and work that you probably didn't necessarily enjoy, that wasn't fulfilling. And that's why it's so important to make sure that the motivator, or what I call the why you're doing something, is very, very clear, and going through that. But it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And one of the things that you mentioned before, which may be a bit confusing for people, is around, you said, you know, you've got a business purpose, a business why, and you've got your personal purpose, and you said that there's a separation from the two. I'd like to just explore that a little bit more at the moment, because I want to make sure that people sort of start to understand exactly how you can go about doing this, because there is a way of, there's a, you know, a process or a path to do this particular work right now that we've got the opportunity to. So it'd be worthwhile just exploring that a little bit more to be able to give people that sort of pathway from this conversation.
Well, my personal purpose really and truly is about freedom. It's a certain kind of freedom that I can touch into. It's like I know that it's something that's very real for me. I often use the word liberation. I talk about liberation of the human spirit because I want to feel that, like, fully alive and free in my world and very creative. That's what's important for me. But that wouldn't make sense as a business purpose. The business isn't about freedom. Your business might give you, for example, financial freedom, or it might give you the freedom to express yourself in a certain way, but it can't alone fulfill that desire for joy or for love or whatever it is that the thing is that really makes you feel good as a human being, because the business is more defined. And so that was very important for me to clarify that. And I did a rebranding exercise recently, and that's where this whole thing about the spirit of generosity, because my work is about money and it's about a new economy and it's about how do we do business in a way that is not manipulative and controlling, but has that spirit of generosity in it. So that's that really made sense to me as a purpose for the business. And then under that purpose, I can think about, well, what do I need to do to help people bring that spirit of generosity into their business? I could do it by being an influencer and being on stage and talking about it. I can do it by creating a course and educating people about it. There are different ways. So then I have to make a choice. You know, Matt says, okay, so what's the why? And what's the what? And what's the how? And like,
all the annoying questions.
These questions, it's like, okay, the what is this? I'm going to run courses. And who? What's the who? The who are certain types of business owners. And it all drops out of that purpose by making it clear that the business has something that it's trying to do. And that thing that it's trying to do, I can measure that, because I can look at how many people have we educated, not how many people did I talk to on social media or how many speeches have I made this year, because actually what I care about is educating people, not making speeches. So I might make speeches or whatever, but they're no longer my primary metric. And before I was thinking, well, what should I count? What's the most important thing for me to be looking at? So it's all this, it's clarity, simplification, and then decisions that fall out of the purpose.
And one of the other things that you just touched upon then is about what's the impact that you have? So we talk about a noble goal. What's the noble goal? Because that could get us very focused on saying, well, what do we ultimately want to achieve? So the why is sort of what we want to, you know, the why do we do something, but why do we do it to achieve what? So the impact that we actually have. I think that was a clarifying moment for you as well when you were drilling down in that particular area.
Well, I know I've actually seen this also with you, that is starting to talk about the noble goal. One thing I've learned a lot, because I work with money and people's relationship with money, is that, and we hear this all the time, and I absolutely see that it's true, and I know you do as well, Matt, that when money is the goal, that is not an ennobling goal. I actually believe money is a beautiful thing, and it's an incredibly powerful, beautiful energy, but it's not the goal, it's the fuel, it's the thing that makes the whole system work. And anyone who has that entrepreneurial spirit or who is a business owner, somewhere in there is something that you really care about that makes you get out of bed and do this thing called running a business, which is way harder really than having a job, and demands unbelievable amounts of commitment and dedication and time and persistence and mistakes and mistakes and mistakes in order to get better and better at it. When whatever that is that drags you out of bed in the morning is aligned with something that lifts your spirit or that makes you feel like this is what I'm here on this planet for. This is what I'm about. This is something I care about so much that I would fight for it. that I would do things that will annoy or irritate or disturb other people because I know what's right here. And I know that what they're doing is not going to work very well for them. And I'm willing to stand up and be an authority, or I'm willing to learn as much as I can about this thing and share it with other people. It's that thing that makes you go over your own boundaries, not in an athletic way. You know, that's what some people do. You know, often we do that when we're kids, but what is it that makes you do that as a fully mature adult, that makes you step beyond the small ordinary person who has a to-do list every day?
Yeah.
And I think that is, to me, work is what ennobles human beings. It's what lifts our spirit. It's our primary way to express ourselves. Of course, we do it in our families as well, but most of us need more than a family. We need an arena where we can actually make an impact in the world that is a positive impact. And so for me, that's the very, very important part of purpose.
And so in real terms, what we tend to do in this situation, or what I do for people is to, first of all, understand, you know, the motivator being the why they get out of bed every day, why do they go into business in the first place, what are they ultimately trying to achieve? But then putting some sort of a goal associated with it, because I think we always like to strive for something or achieve something as part of our human spirit that you're talking about. And so that's why that noble goal sort of comes into it, because you say, well, currently this is the impact that I might be having. And in our sort of business, you know, we're all about helping business owners achieve why they went into business in the first place. That's fundamentally the business purpose. I have a slightly different one to that, which we've spoken about before, which is, you know, working with cool people doing cool stuff for a better life sort of type thing. So it's a different lens, but it's still connected. But in terms of the business goal, I know that we directly look after 1,000 businesses, which employs, you know, on average 20 people, which means that, you know, we're looking after 20,000 families that we're supporting. And I know that that's a significant impact into the community and the economy. And I know that as a larger group, we're looking after 2,500 direct clients in families. Really, we look at it from a family, personal perspective. You know, and if I think that I could, you know, influence 100,000 and look after 100,000 people to help make better decisions and have a better life, then that becomes more of a noble goal to actually strive for, rather than just getting another customer or another client or another business. You're starting to look at it from a bigger picture point of view. And then that then gives me a sense of, well, what am I actually trying to achieve, and where am I going, and what I'm trying to do, really. And that's gives me a greater sense of motivation on the days where it can be a little bit dark and glum and it's hard. As you said before, running a business is hard. And so how do we actually get through those difficult times, and also not just say, I'm done, I'm over, but push through that into, you know, creating a life and a business life that supports beyond today and tomorrow, because, you know, we're needed. The economy needs us. We represent 47% of the GDP in this country, and so therefore without us, you know, it's not necessarily going to be a great environment to be in. And so that's why it's hugely important to connect all these things together and stay connected together as business and business owners to support the trajectory of that. And that's probably why I wanted to have this conversation with you today, because I know the importance of it and we come from different angles associated with it.
There is another thing that I think is really significant that I know when you were just talking there. When you have this more noble goal, so you're thinking, how many families are we supporting? Then every additional family is something else to feel good about, to appreciate. And it enables us to get away from that goal that is out there that essentially I'm always failing in. Like if my goal is 100 families and I'm at 3 families at the moment, I just feel like I'm 97 families away. Yeah. But when you feel it, when you switch it around, it's like that, you know, you organize an event and you want 50 people to come and 30 people to come. Is that 30 great people who've shown up at your event, who've come here to learn something, or 20 people who are missing? And it allows us to start to count the people who show up and appreciate them, which creates a really warm feeling, rather than always counting the gap between me and my goal. And I think this is a really significant kind of mindset and heart set shift, because it allows us to get into appreciation. And Matt, being a good accountant, what you appreciate appreciates, literally. Yeah. And that's a fundamental principle of life. And so to be in an appreciative state in business enables good things to grow. So there's a lot of goodness that comes out of finding out what your noble goal or purpose is, what it is that elevates you beyond the ordinary.
And I think now more than ever, we need to be really focused on this, because people are going to be very discerning about the choices and the decisions that they make post-COVID. I really do believe that people are going to really focus on who do they want to align themselves with in terms of maybe employment, who do they want to buy from in terms of, from a customer or client perspective, or supply to. So I think that it's really more now than ever before where we must, as business owners, really stand for something and, connect with the purposes of our business and the purposes of our lives, and make the decisions that we make that are going to, personally, selfishly be fulfilling, okay, and also, but also mean that we're running really significant businesses that have got impact, that are thriving, that we're enjoying our business life from. And I do really believe right now is a great time for us to think about it.
Very much so. And purpose creates attraction. You don't have to work so hard because people are attracted towards it.
So look, it's been a good chat, as it always is, Sarah. So is there any last sort of statements or comments that you wanted to make in relation to this particular topic?
Yes, there is one. You shared an article with me recently that was produced. It was written by McKinsey's, the management consultancy, and I hope you're going to share it in the forum.
Sure.
It was about purpose in business, and they were talking more about large businesses, but essentially saying that even at the very large business scale, the businesses that don't have that purpose will not succeed in the new world. But the thing that struck me most, which I know from my own work, but I just thought it was so amazing to see this written in that context. They said it takes a lot of time, a lot of commitment, and it is not easy. So this is not a kind of like sit down and have a little chat and then I've got it sorted, or, oh yeah, that purpose question, whatever. It's really hard. Yeah, it's really hard, and it's really worthwhile. So if it feels hard, just know that you're right on track, and it's all the more worth doing, because, I don't want to present that it's just like some really easy little thing, like a formula, a little business formula that you go out and do, and now you've got it written down. It's not like that. It has to be for real. Everybody can tell now when it's for real and when it's for not. And we need to be real, because it makes us feel good and it makes life feel worth living.
Yeah, it's good, and it's great that you've just married sort of some of the data or the science behind, what we're talking about, and it's just not fluffy concepts that we're really, just having a good chat about. This is hardcore business, and the reality is it takes a tremendous amount of inward thinking and looking at, but also the discipline of actually doing that and then executing on whatever you believe that you believe in, really, in the day, and the relentless pursuit of that. So, and
listening to other people, because they all have purposes too, and they count absolutely as much as I do and you do. And that makes it even more challenging, but more engaging as well. Yeah.
So, you probably worked out that, Sarah sort of comes from a different perspective in terms of thinking about solving problems, and helped me tremendously look at different angles of business and looking angles of making decisions from all of the teachings that she's had and learnt and passed on. And so, that's why we thought it'd be a great combination for us to chat from our backgrounds, me being probably a fairly traditional accountant and growing up in that environment, and Sarah growing up in more of an education background, Chinese mastery, energy orientated perspective, and spiritual perspective, which I think is tremendous to put those two things together to work out a better way. And that's fundamentally why we've created the podcast that we do, just because it's fun too, and business should be fun as much as anything else as well. So anyway, we'll give you the links to those if people are interested in wanting to sort of know more about some of the things that we discuss on a regular basis from that perspective. But just want to thank you for your time again, Sarah, today. It's been another great chat, as it always is for me, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
So that leads us probably to the end of today's session. There hasn't really been any questions other than I have a friend of mine who likes to ask me a question every week, who he runs a business as a jeweler, and he also is my boxing partner and my gym partner for many years, and he always asks the question about how many burpees and push-ups do I have to do to keep sane. And we spoke about this last week about the importance of spiritual education and knowledge and mindfulness, but also physical is required as well. So he's taken my advice to do as many as he can, but now he's actually in the physio, so he's now blaming me for the cost associated with that. But these are the things that are important. They're important to ensure that we're connecting, that we're staying mindful, we're making really conscious decisions, because that will save us a lot of time in the future, as Sarah said. So I just want to thank everybody for their time again today. Thanks, Ian, once again for your time. Matt Smith's been online if we needed to chat about anything relating to the sort of the JobKeeper. So, I think everybody's pretty much across that nowadays, as I said before. So appreciate Matt for being available. Sarah, once again, awesome. Love chatting to you. And so we'll share the links to the podcast. We'll share the link also to the article that Sarah spoke about in regards to business purpose from McKinsey's, and also the slides from Ian today as well. So thanks everyone for their time, and we'll see you next week. Bye.